Gettysburg Seminary presents the Seminary Explores podcast. Conversations on faith, art, people, politics, theology, life, and more, with voices from around the corner and around the globe.
Hello, this is Kristen Johnston-Largen here with Gettysburg Seminary's Seminary Explores podcast, and I'm very delighted to have as my guest today Vince Evener, who is our new one-year Reformation history appointment with the possibility of renewal and maybe longer, depending on how everything unfolds with searches that we have before us and faculty configurations. But we're delighted to have you here, so welcome. And Vince, I just thought it would be really nice to kind of take this opportunity before the semester gets started. This is when we're taping this anyway. We don't know when it'll air, but to say a little bit. So kind of take this opportunity to be able to introduce you to our constituency and hear a little bit about your background, hear a little bit about your work, and talk about what you see as sort of interesting current aspects of Luther and Reformation studies from your background and things that you're excited about as you think about the coming year. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, I understand that you, this is kind of a welcome home for you in some ways. You grew up in this area.
Yeah, so I grew up in central Pennsylvania, so about, it would be an hour north of here if you could drive straight there. It's about an hour and a half because of the way the roads work out in a small town called Millerstown. Okay. Not to be confused with Millersville or Millersburg or any of the various other Millers.
I feel there was a distinct lack of creativity in some of the city naming, I just have to say. But
well, there were a lot of Millers, apparently.
And they all deserved their own little place.
Yes.
Well, did you come to Gettysburg as a boy then?
Yes, you know, in fact. I was a frequent visitor to Gettysburg as a boy, maybe through my early teenage years. My mother would occasionally get a day off work. My sister or I would get to choose where we wanted to go, and my sister wanted to go to Hershey Park because she was, normal, quote unquote normal. But I was very interested in history, and at that time in the Civil War, so I always wanted to come to Gettysburg.
That is so funny. Did you usually went out, or was it half and half?
It was half and half. Unfortunately. I think she enjoyed Gettysburg. We climbed on the rocks.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really exciting. I mean, we've of course, and you will have this experience too, right? You have many people who want to come and visit you, and so you do the battlefield tour more than you can imagine. But it's to see all the monuments and stuff. We've had kids come when children of our friends and stuff, and there's something about it it is very exciting, especially the castle on the top of Little Round Top. Right. That is something to be able to go up in there. So,
as an adult, I'm impressed, as I never was as a child, by the scope of it.
Right.
I often run along what, as you do, were the battle lines, and it's an extraordinary.
Yeah, it is big,
terrifying. Length of people that was stretched out.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. It is a little bit hard to imagine. The joke is always in the summer, inevitably you'll be stopped at least once by someone who says, "Can you tell me where the battlefield is?" It's always like you have to sort of probe a little bit more. What are you actually looking for? Because you're on it, the whole thing. So yeah. So you grew up here, and then where did you go to college?
Kenyon College in
Okay.
Ohio. Actually, I went to my first year. I did at the University of Pittsburgh at Bradford,
okay,
which is northwestern Pennsylvania, very close to New York. And then after my first year, I transferred to Kenyon College, looking for a bit more of a challenge, I suppose.
Yeah. And were you interested in history, church history, Luther, even then?
That's a good question. I was, without my knowing it, in a sense.
Oh, that's interesting.
I bounced back and forth between a history and a political science degree.
Okay.
I always, have still a strong interest in politics. And eventually I decided for history simply because I found it more fascinating. And I don't know, at one point I realized that I was writing all of my history papers about the history of Christianity.
It was just sort of happening, and then you suddenly stopped and thought, this is interesting.
Yeah, it was almost a sudden realization, like, wait a minute, this is my, fifth history, research paper.
Really?
And it's actually on religion. I wrote my senior thesis on early Anabaptism.
You did?
In fact.
Yeah.
But I declared as I was leaving undergraduate that I would never go to graduate school.
You never make statements like that. Don't ever do that, because really, you get punished for that, I feel.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. Yeah, I really wanted to do something, practical and important. So I moved to DC.
So of course, where all the important practical people are.
I worked for a law firm.
Okay.
But I gradually felt the pull back to school and to study. That it was it was what I was really interested in doing. What really excited me.
Yeah.
And being in DC has a way of convincing you that people need to change, not just policy, but the way they think. Like, thinking is a very important thing to the way a society functions. Yeah,
right. That's interesting.
That inspired me.
Yeah. How we think affects how we talk to one another, right, and vice versa.
Sure.
And it does feel like we're sort of at the point where...
And the ability to see other perspectives, to be open to them and not immediately hostile. Is so important.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about, this impetus to want to make a difference, to want to do good, those kind of things. And I think we all sort of feel that way. And I think it's really, it's a gift that takes so many different shapes. We need the people who are in DC doing that kind of work, and I could never in a million years do that kind of work. But the dedicated thinking and reflecting, and then to be able to bring that and teach and form learners is also really important, but in a different kind of way, I think, too. So, yeah, I don't know, just thinking about that. So you decided to go to graduate school, and how were you thinking about graduate school?
How was I thinking about graduate school?
Like, where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do.
Boy, I'm going to end up confessing a lot of...
Oh, excellent! Did you pass someone on the street who said, hey, Chicago?
I really thought... I was interested in a couple things. My interest in Anabaptism had to continue to grow. I've grown into a broader interest in Christian pacifism and just understanding this sort of the courage and the impetus to take that stance, even at great personal sacrifice.
Okay.
I was also very interested in theory of religion, sociology and anthropology, all of which is to say I knew I was interested in religion, but I didn't have a strong sort of idea about what that meant, and nor was I a Lutheran at this time.
I was going to ask you, so were you practicing Christianity at this time also, or not so much?
I would say no. Well, the answer is no.
Okay.
This, my broader sort of spiritual autobiography.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Church of God, which anyone who is from Pennsylvania or Ohio might know of, the Church of God General Conference, the Winebrenners.
Okay.
Actually, there's a Winebrenner parking lot down by the park in Gettysburg. There may be some connection
there. You go. Yeah, who knows?
Which is a very, they're focused on renewal.
Okay.
You might sort of put them in a holiness tradition. At least that's sort of what the emphasis was when I was growing up.
Does it relate at all to the Anabaptists going back, or is it something totally different?
The Winebrenners grew out of the German Reformed tradition.
Okay.
And it was a movement for, adult baptism following an authentic experience.
Got it.
So, and then, in the sense in that tradition, I never sort of felt up to par.
Yeah.
But personally, you'll begin to see why I became attracted to Lutheranism. I never really felt up to par, and also, in all honesty, it was, a tradition that, and the issue of homosexuality was very, very troubling to me. Seemed, I couldn't understand how a sort of exclusion and Christianity should go together. Or maybe I should say I couldn't understand, why I would want to be part of a tradition that, was based on exclusion and hostility, and eventually Christian involvement in war became very troubling to me.
Okay.
But then, Yeah, so I was slowly brought back, in this way that I never expected. The Anabaptist witness was so important to me. As after I graduated college, I would date myself. The world suddenly seemed like a very violent place.
Yeah.
But that ability to draw such powerful inspiration from the Scripture, from the life of Christ was just inspiring to me, and that sort of pulled me in. And coming to graduate school was really by chance. I didn't know what I was doing. To be honest with you, well, when you're supposed to go to graduate school, you're supposed to know what you want to study.
Yes, and that's what I tell our students.
You're supposed to know what you want to study, who you want to study with, and they're supposed to study that exact thing.
That's exactly right.
So I went to a place where nobody did anything that I had any particular interest in, and I ended up working with Susan Schreiner, who was doing her work on Luther, and I ended up worshiping at Augustana Lutheran Church in Hyde Park, and that's really, it was quite some years now.
Did you honestly throw a dart at a map and say, Chicago, why not? I mean, why not anywhere else? Why not anywhere in D.C.? Why?
They gave me the best offer.
Okay, well, that is not unimportant.
And there aren't a lot of master's opportunities. It's very hard to get into a Ph.D. program without a master's, but there aren't a particularly large number of master's programs in religion.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
So
sure.
Chicago's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and obviously, great people, big faculty. Yeah, of course.
It was a fantastic place to study. So,
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you kind of just fell in, you started taking classes, and you got interested in the work that Susan was doing. Why don't you say a little bit more about her area of specialty and what she...
Well, she's a Reformation scholar. She did her initial work on Calvin more than Luther.
Okay.
Her most recent book is on certitude in the Reformation.
Certitude?
In fact, I shouldn't say certitude in the Reformation. It's certitude in the early modern period. She sees the age as, she's really interested in the character of the age, and she sees the age as defined by a quest for certitude, to have absolute certitude. And with the Lutherans in particular, it was certitude of individual salvation. I want to feel, I want to know that I am saved. And
that's interesting.
What Luther, obtains with his, discovery about faith.
Huh. Do you agree with her argument? Do you think overall it's a valid generalization and a valid point about Lutheranism, would you say?
Yes, I think it's valid. Yeah, I think it's a valid argument. I kind of, my own work is deeply indebted to her, and I kind of build on it. Obviously, certitude itself becomes a problem. This is where my work kind of comes in and intersects with hers in terms of, I have certitude. Oh, I know that I'm saved. Oh, wait a minute. Do I have that certitude from God or the devil?
Oh, right.
And this becomes a problem, but, my own work looks at how, suffering, the experience of suffering is part of the answer for Luther.
Yeah. Say more about that. What did you...
Well, for Luther, it's key that faith is directed against reason. God says, I'll give you salvation, for free. You don't have to earn it. And reason says, surely I've got it.
Surely you need something.
There's got to be something. And behind that is this desire to have what we might call self-esteem in a sort of... Yeah. In a sense that I'm able to offer something. I'm not that bad.
Right.
And so for Luther, when it comes to sort of accepting salvation as a gift, there's always there's a suffering involved in that. There's a going against yourself and everything precisely that you really want to believe and know about yourself. So spiritual suffering is very important for Luther, and sort of defines how he regards all the outward suffering we have in life. So I have an illness, for example. That can be a way to exercise my faith, because faith is trusting in God, trusting in God's promise, and not trusting in myself. All of your life, all of your suffering becomes sort of reorganized around, around the concept of faith. But whereas, where it comes into sort of, helping to confirm truth or to confirm spiritual experience, to the question of, do I have true faith or don't I have true faith? If the faith I have exalts me in some way, if it leaves that sort of, self-esteem intact. I think that I don't want to. There's a different type of self-esteem.
No, I know it's tricky. It's tricky.
It's a tricky thing to talk about. But there's in a sense, if the salvation I've received is in some way in harmony with my will and in harmony with my reason, in harmony with my fallen will and fallen reason, then it's probably false.
Yeah.
If I have a faith that tells me I can earn salvation, it's probably false.
Well, this sounds like this also gets a little bit at the theology of glory, theology of the cross, or theologian of, there's some of that too, right? That challenge. I mean, it has to. Yeah. It's interesting. This is a total tangent, but when you were just talking about that, the kind of the suffering that is inherent in the realization that, no, you're actually not the person you thought you were. You're not this. I was just thinking about all the conversations that we've been having lately about race, in this country. And I think part of the real pushback for a lot of people is having to deal with this realization that we're not this colorblind society, that we're not these post-racial people, that we're not, and there is suffering in that. It's really painful to have to deal with that. But I think, and I hadn't thought about this together, but I was thinking, and for me then, if I'm going to extend the parallel, it feels like in the same way that Luther would say, you can't get at this real trust in God, right, unless you're willing to accept that and let go of this false vision of yourself. Our society is not going to be able to, I don't think, move forward until we're ready to sort of give that up. I don't know.
I agree. I mean, I think Luther is, one of the things that's extraordinary about Luther is how effective he is at dissecting self-justification, and that the subtle ways in which reason always kind of gets in there and messes up your salvation one way or another. But self-justification is a part of all of our life, including our political life. Yeah, we can come up with a lot of reasons to make ourselves feel good about the policies that we might engage in. And at the same time, maybe somewhere in the back of your head that those are just self-justifications and something else is going on. And I think that sort of habit of criticism is something that can be learned from Luther. Yeah. It's very important.
That's nice. Yeah, I mean, it's always... it's exciting to hear you. Just exciting to hear you talk about your own sense of your research and then the ways to bring that to students, because I think one of the challenges is to say, okay, on the one hand we could study Luther in just in sort of the historical box. But of course not. We want to think about how this is relevant, why this matters, how we sort of bring this. And it's always kind of amazing to me, some of the things that you read, like in his, whatever, the large catechism, and, that how it was written so long ago, but you think, oh, this still is really the same dynamic is going on, in a lot of ways. It feels to me like it's still really relevant.
I think that's one of the challenges, teaching history, whether it's to undergraduate seminarians. It's sort of, there's this, it's really easy to regard history as irrelevant. Now, Luther sometimes is easy because of the way he writes, the way, it's so clear what's going on. But, like the ancient Christian creeds can be troubling, the Book of Concord. It can seem like a bunch of people who were discussing an obscure issue, and
it's true.
Not only obscure issues, but kind of the wrong issue. Why were they
wasting so much time, right?
Why are they wasting so much time? But I think if you do work to understand the history, you can really start to see the relevance. What's at stake in a Trinitarian debate. So often it was salvation.
Yeah,
that was at stake. How can God interact with creation? How? Right. Is creation even good?
Yeah,
those sort of fundamental issues are there, and they're still with us. They're still those sort of fundamental questions if you approach the world Christian faith.
Yeah.
And even if you approach the world from any other perspective, the goodness of the world, the source of evil, those are still.
Yeah. No, it's true. You're right. Yeah. Well, as you think about your teaching here in this new context, you had some exposure, of course, when you were in Chicago to the Lutheran Seminary there. What have you thought about that's sort of exciting or challenging or interesting about teaching in this context in a seminary?
The great thing about being in a seminary versus, say, an undergraduate context is you don't necessarily have to make, the relevance argument so strongly. You often find interest.
Yeah, that's true. You will find interest in Luther here.
In
Reformation history.
And that's just a wonderful experience and very exciting for me to, presume that the students are engaged, excited.
Yeah.
To me, this is a very exciting place to be because I know that what we do in the classroom is going to have importance for what goes on in congregations. I know that, I sincerely hope that, students would come out of my classes with a sense of how much history can be a resource for them, how much, Luther's own writings can be a resource for them, how much the Lutheran past can be a resource for them. And and a sense that they, belong to something that has been going on for a very, very, long time.
Yes.
Maybe Lutherans are hostile to tradition, but that's not really how the Reformers were.
No,
that's not really.
No.
The fact that the gospel had always been proclaimed from for Luther from the Old Testament on down.
Yeah, right. Of course,
it's so important. I'm excited by the opportunity to teach that to the students here. Yeah.
Well, that's fabulous. Well, we are just thrilled that you're here, and I think the students, they don't know you yet, but they will, and they're going to be really lucky. We got to watch you do some teaching when you were here for your interview, and that was so much fun. It's just clear that you're a really good natural teacher, and I think it's fun for us to hear a kind of a fresh perspective coming out of a doctoral program, and I think it's going to be great. It'll be good for all of us to kind of have some more of these conversations, and I think we're all looking forward to it. So, welcome, and we'll look forward to seeing how the year unfolds.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us. Great, thank you.
You have been listening to The Seminary Explores from historic Seminary Ridge in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a production of Gettysburg Seminary. We invite you to visit our website at www.ltsg.edu. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Gettysburg Seminary or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.